I'm here today with Derek. Hello, Derek.
Hello there.
Now, we first met at the Gathering in a field near Swindon with Christian Vision for Men a little while back, and we got talking about why you were there because you were talking about your project, which is, get this right, the Jesus Evidence.
Jesus, the evidence is the yeah the mission, and what we're doing is basically providing presentations on the historical and rational basis for Jesus being the Son of God.
It's brilliant. I remember hearing a sermon one time, and it still sticks in my head.
Hmm.
And the guy, all he was doing it wasn't a teaching. It was just, here are the facts of the Bible. Here are the facts of why the Bible was replicated exactly the way it was. It's the most republished book, and all of this adds to the evidence. And that's what I remembered about and took away, because it isn't just about blind faith, which of course is part of this, but actually there's so much evidence that's everywhere, even if we don't have to look very hard.
Well, you've got there. It's good to know we've got a historical and rational basis for the faith we have.
Hmm.
That underpins everything. So it's wonderful to know that.
So just let's go back in time just a little bit. What's your story of faith? And we'll come back to why you developed this project. But I mean, how did you come to faith? What's your journey?
Okay, right. So I would guess I would have classified myself in my 20s and 30s as a resolute agnostic. I really thought you couldn't prove there was a God or prove there wasn't a God. So I just drifted along, I guess. I had these big conversations we have with friends in your teens and your 20s. And is there a God? And why are we all here? And so on and so forth. I never really came to any kind of clear conclusions. Um, so really through my 20s and 30s, as I say, I would classify myself as a resolute agnostic. I never could say I was an atheist, and because I felt that was really a step too far. How could you say there definitely wasn't a God? You know, it was impossible to say. I felt it was impossible to say that. Um, uh, Frankly, it's a faith position, but we'll maybe come back to that later. And so that was where I was until my late 30s. And I got to my late 30s and I thought, it'd be nice to kind of resolve in my mind what I think about this and I come to some kind of clear conclusions. So if it's a lot of old nonsense, I can forget about it and not even think about it anymore. Just put it to one side and get on with living my earthly life. But if it is true, it's kind of important. So I wanted to try and get to that position. And so I was in America on a business trip, and I was sitting in the back of a car between Cleveland and Erie, Pennsylvania, and I was sitting next to this fella, and we're just talking away. And I asked him what he'd been doing for his holidays. He was from California, and he said, "Oh, I've been over to Oxford on missionary work." I thought, I didn't think they sent missionaries to Oxford. Anyway, there you are. So that kind of sparked my curiosity. I asked him some questions I had been rumbling around my head. He did his best to answer them and so on. Anyway, at the end of the conversation, he said he would send me a couple of books that might help with the questions I had. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, I received a copy of a Bible and a copy of The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. So I read The Case for Christ. Of course, I didn't read the Bible. It'd be a bit stupid thing to do. Anyway, so I read the Bible. No, read the Case for Christ, and I got to the end of it, and I thought, okay, that was very interesting. Am I a Christian? No, I'm not a Christian, but there was enough there to pique my curiosity. I thought, there might be something in this. So that started my own investigation into who Jesus is. Now, I mean, I'm saying my own investigation. All this information is out there. It's all in published sources, but you have to take a bit here, a bit from here, and so on and so forth. So I did that, did the reading, and gradually over time, I thought, here there's something in this. So I eventually did an alpha course, and I got to the end of the Alpha course, and some interesting things happened in the Alpha course. Um, I remember sitting actually the first night of the Alpha course. They do the kind of historical and rational, historical basis for Jesus, but it's done very. They kind of skim over it inevitably. They've only got one night to do it, and they do it in a way that's suitable for the rest of the course. But I remember sitting in the first night saying, if I hadn't done this research, I'd have be sitting here thinking, aye, right, that bit, aye, and I probably wouldn't have come back. But thankfully, I had done that, and so I came back and I did the Alpha course, and I got to the end of it. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do? It was one of these things that people talk about life-changing spiritual experiences and so on. Nothing had applied to me like that. And I got to the end of it. I thought, right, what are you going to do? You're going to continue to sit in the fence, or are you going to do something? So I thought, I'll give it a go. So I basically started going to church, and I had I went to church, and I started reading the Bible, and I started paying attention to what Jesus said, and so on and so forth, and trying to live my life that way. And slowly but surely, it became real, and here I am talking to you. And so that's why I became a Christian. I mean, it was really as dull as that. It wasn't any fireworks or anything like that. But just it seemed like the sensible thing to give it a go. So I did, and it's made a tremendous difference to my life, as it does to everyone's life who becomes a Christian. So my relationships with my family are fantastic, are far better than they were before I was a Christian. My relationship to work and my relationship to life really is so much richer and just better. So I've experienced the wonderful things that happen if you follow Jesus. It's I'm so glad I made that decision. So that's pretty much it.
I mean, you say it wasn't fireworks, but for me listening, it clearly was. One, because the amount of excitement you have about what happened, but we each have our own journey, our own story. We all
Yes,
come from
indeed.
different places. We come to the
Hmm.
same, the one and true God, but our
Yeah.
journey to Him can start from so many places. But for you, you wanted evidence in a particular way, which was your
Well,
story.
yeah. Well, I mean, well, that's right. As you say, everybody's path to Jesus is unique to them, and so it had to be this way for me. So thankfully I followed it and paid attention. So yes, indeed.
And I love the way you said, if this is true, then it's worth looking at. It's worth a go. And
Yeah.
I wonder how many people think, well, I should have a go, but where do I begin? I mean, for you,
Mm.
I would guess Alpha is a part of that story as well.
Yes.
But if we don't speak to people, like you spoke to that missionary guy on the plane, you had a conversation and he was willing to
Yeah.
talk back to you.
Hmm.
But how often I think do we not have that willingness? And the Bible says we're supposed to have a reason to justify our faith, to defend what it is we believe.
Yes, indeed.
But how of
Well,
us do
indeed.
that?
Well, indeed. It's when I became, about a couple of years after I became a Christian, I thought to myself, well, look, there's plenty of people like me out there. Um, just drifting along, and need some facts. But I had to do a fair amount of digging about in various books and listening to people talking and so on and so forth. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was something to bring all this information together in a nice, easy, so somebody else doesn't have to go and do the digging about I had to do. Um, so I thought that's what I'll do. I'll find somebody. I'll find an organisation to get involved with that does this kind of thing, and I'll volunteer and I'll get involved and so on and so forth. But at the time, I couldn't find anything. Now, in fairness, there is an organisation today that does this kind of stuff. I'm sure you've come across Solas in Dundee. They do this kind of stuff. They didn't exist at the time. So I looked, and I really looked to try and find an organisation or people that were doing something like this. I couldn't find anything, so I thought I'll just do it myself. That's sum and substance of why I'm doing the Jesus the Evidence stuff. It's nothing existed at the time, and I wanted a way of conveying the information that I'd gathered to other people. Well, non-Christians particularly, but Christians find it of use as well, certainly.
I was going to say that the guy that was speaking at a church one time, he's speaking in a church to Sunday morning, so basically all Christians. And
Yes.
yet I found it so reassuring, so
Yep.
encouraging to
Mm.
be retold things I knew and also find out facts I didn't know. I mean, how many Bibles were translated and how many were
Mm-hmm.
copied and how many
Mm-hmm.
originals they were, and it sort of goes through history. And all of a sudden it brings such a richness to what I already knew some parts of, having done a little bit of theology at school. And it opened my eyes and it enhanced it because it made it much richer.
Yes, and well, that's certainly true, and I have found that, as I probably said to you at the gathering, I do these presentations all over the country, and what I encourage Christian organisations to do is to bring to host an evening. I'll come and do the presentation, and I'll file a lot of information out at the audience. So basically, what the idea is, the Christian people that are hosting the evening, they bring their non-Christian friends, family members, work colleagues along to one evening just to hear the evidence and allow them to make up their own mind. But of course, it allows conversations to a conversation opener to the non-Christians and so on. And of course, it's very, very useful to the Christians that come along. They may know in their heart that Jesus is real. It's true, and there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But if you have this historical and rational underpinning to it, it's it helps. It helps you. It helps your faith.
I was going to say it can be really helpful when someone can share their story, their testimony, which is partly what we're doing here. But
Yep.
also, there's so much more beyond just one person's story, which is amazingly powerful. And that's why I love doing these. But actually, there's more
Yes.
to it as well. There's the
Mm.
facts and the evidence. There's the historical stuff, which we frequently I think miss out on because, like you say, it's not necessarily quite so obvious or easy for us to find. I remember
Yep.
listening to Canon J. John one time, and he went through three books by three
Yes.
authors, three people who all said there cannot be a God. I'm going to
Yep.
disprove that. There is no God. He cannot
Yep.
exist. And as they researched the evidence, they found there's an awful lot of evidence that says God is real. Jesus
Indeed.
really was real. And then they came to faith. One I particularly remember as a guy who thought his wife had gone completely off the reservation. She's in a cult. She's gone mental. I'm going to prove to her that God doesn't exist. And he found faith through that and then wrote a book on God is real.
Yes.
And I love stories like that because when we actually start to look at stuff, there is evidence. You can question someone's story. You can't disprove it. It's their story.
Yes,
Evidence is
indeed.
there for everyone. It's like a scientific,
Mm.
proper, decent experiment. It can be tested and it can be held and it can be looked at, and someone can recreate the same thing from facts.
Yes, indeed. Well, yeah, you're quite right. I mean, I've I start the presentation by talking about what are the sources of evidence we have for Jesus, and I run through the Gospels, Paul's letters, and and so on, archaeology and other sources from outside the Bible, and so on and so forth. And the last one I come to is circumstantial evidence. And what I say is that, well, look, Christianity has been around in this planet for a long time. Uh, People have been Christians for a couple of thousand years. Christianity is the biggest religion on earth, but we know there was a time when there were no Christians on this planet. So, what happened to cause the first Christians to become Christians? Something must have happened, and that sounds kind of like stating the obvious, but for all of us, that's atheists, agnostics, Christians, those of other faiths, it provides a direct challenge. When and why started is a historical event. So that historical event can be studied like any other historical event. And if you do, it's there's a tremendous amount of evidence to say that the Bible is reflecting what actually happened.
Which is what I love. I loved when we chatted at the Gathering Ghost store. I like somebody who's gone around and said, you know what, this is my story. And then what I particularly like was your journey of faith of evidence. As I said earlier, that's what God then uses you to do for other people, because he uses who he's made us to be, right? And our story is never just
undoubtedly
our story, but he's used part of that journey for you to enable others who have a similar question in mind, I guess.
Undoubtedly. Well, we've all, we've been charged to spread the good news, and that's what we're all capable of doing it in our own way. And I've talked to people before and said, "Oh, I've been a Christian all my life. Oh, I haven't got an exciting story." Yeah, I've got an exciting story. The thing about everybody's story is, to some extent, the more mundane, the better. Insofar as you read these stories about these tremendous conversions. I was a drug dealer, and I was doing terrible things, and I met Jesus. My life turned around. They're fantastic stories, but unless you're another drug dealer or a bad man, you're probably not going to. It doesn't really talk into your life. The mundane stories, if you can explain them well enough, is that they're more relevant to most people you're going to talk to.
So how do people access what it is that you're doing? You've already shared that you go to churches, you do a presentation, but how do people get hold of you? What is it that they can get from you?
Right. So there's the website, www.jesustheevidence.com. It's all on there. If you want to run if you think this year that'd be a great thing for my church, it'd be a great thing for an outreach event. You can contact us on the website, and I will do presentations anywhere, frankly. I've only done one in continental Europe. I did one in Poland a couple of years ago. I had somebody translating for me, but I'll certainly travel anywhere in the UK. And I'm very happy to travel abroad or whatever. I did one in Guernsey a couple of weeks ago. That was very exciting. It was really an enjoyable thing to do. So I will do them anywhere. And what at the end of the evening, everybody gets a copy of the booklet. The booklet's on the website as well. The booklet, it basically goes into what we talk about in a lot more detail, so you can digest it at your leisure. And but the booklet can be read on its own. It doesn't need the presentation. So if you want a copy of the booklet, just contact me on the website, and I'm more than happy to post one out to you.
Wow, which is amazing in itself. Thank you. So it's the last thing in people's minds. Just remind me the website of what you do. What is that?
It's called jesustheevidence.com, and it's got the booklet on it, and it's got a bit about what we're doing about Jesus the Evidence, and so on and so forth. So it goes into what we do in a bit more detail.
Derek, thank you. I know we've been trying to have this chat for quite a long time.
Yes,
life
indeed.
issues get in the way.
Yes, indeed.
But that is life, isn't it? Stuff comes in the way, and it's good to finally connect with you. So apologies for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. So if you want more, jesustheevidence.com, get in touch with Derek and see how he might be able to help you, your church, or your group. Derek, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Cheers.
Rated 5 stars by Sorted Magazine's film critic, Pure 247 takes you behind the scenes of the birth of a global Christian radio station. Andy B will have you laughing and crying as you discover what it takes to create ministry that matters in this inspiring tale of perseverance, honesty, and vulnerability. Buckle up and get ready for a story that's uplifting as it is entertaining. Behind the microphone, they face bankruptcy, eviction, and 2 life-changing surgeries. Can they make it? Will they make it? Get your copy of this life-changing book today. Pure 247 is available now on Amazon. Andy B is best described as a man after God's own heart, who insists that God's vision and resourcing trump all handicaps.